The story begins with the recurring tragedy that has played out across American highways: tractor trailers, 18-wheelers, vehicles that symbolize the backbone of commerce, but that also carry the weight of danger. When regulatory failures collide with human error, the crash in Fort Worth in February of 2021 remains etched in memory. 2 lives lost after a massive truck rear ended them at speed. Only a few months later, in June, another disaster followed. 5 more lives extinguished when the driver of a similar 18-wheeler admitted he had fallen asleep at the wheel before colliding with a line of stopped vehicles. These are not isolated cases. They are signals, warnings of systemic stress within an industry that has become both indispensable and increasingly vulnerable. It is within this environment that political leaders have begun to intervene. When Secretary of State Marco Rubio took to the digital platform now called X, his warning was blunt. He pointed to a surge of foreign drivers behind the wheel of America's largest commercial vehicles, men and women who, he argued, endangered American lives and undercut American workers. His statement did not arise in a vacuum. For months, investigative journalists have tracked a disturbing pattern: crashes with high casualty counts, drivers with questionable qualifications, and loopholes in immigration and licensing frameworks that allow undertrained individuals to operate vehicles weighing tens of thousands of pounds at highway speeds. The pressure reached a breaking point after another horrific accident, this time in Florida, just 9 days before federal authorities unveiled new measures. On the Florida Turnpike, dashcam footage captured an 18-wheeler making an illegal U-turn that blocked an entire lane of traffic. A family minivan collided with the trailer at full force. 3 lives ended in an instant. 3 more added to the mounting toll that has become all too familiar. Public outrage erupted when it was confirmed that the driver had entered the United States illegally in 2018, claimed asylum, and later obtained a temporary work permit during the Biden administration. Here was a convergence of issues: immigration enforcement, public safety, regulatory oversight, and political accountability. Florida officials revealed further details that ignited debate. After the crash, the driver took an English proficiency test. Out of 12 questions, he answered only 2 correctly. Confronted with 4 standard road signs, he identified only 1. In court, he required a translator. He was a native of India, and his limited English proficiency raised questions that went beyond his individual case. Could a person who cannot understand instructions from law enforcement, who cannot read road signs or safety directives, be entrusted with an 80,000-pound truck on American roads? Critics pointed to a loophole in enforcement. While federal law has long required truckers to demonstrate English proficiency during traffic stops and at weigh stations, enforcement had been suspended under the Obama administration in 2016. It was only reinstated under the Trump administration in June of 2025. Within weeks, more than 1,500 drivers were removed from service for failing to meet the standard. This raised a fundamental point. A regulation exists, but unless it is enforced, it is meaningless. The sequence of administrations illustrated how political choices shape public safety outcomes. When enforcement was suspended, drivers who could not meet the English requirement continued to operate freely. When enforcement resumed, hundreds were sidelined almost immediately, suggesting that the issue was not marginal but widespread. The Florida crash became the most visible evidence of the danger. The driver is now facing 3 counts of vehicular homicide. The company he worked for, White Hawk Carriers of California, lost its insurance and federal operating authority. Yet the damage is done. 3 lives lost, families shattered, and systemic trust eroded. From a broader perspective, the crisis reveals 3 interlocking dynamics. The first is the structural shortage of truck drivers in the United States. Demographic trends, lifestyle factors, and wage stagnation have deterred many Americans from entering or remaining in the profession. To fill the gap, companies have turned increasingly to foreign labor, often through temporary visa programs. This pressure creates a fertile environment for exploitation, corner cutting, and the lowering of safety standards. The second dynamic is the intersection of immigration politics with domestic safety. What might otherwise be a regulatory issue becomes magnified by its symbolism. A foreign driver with limited English proficiency involved in a deadly crash is not seen solely as an individual failing, but as a representation of broader systemic weakness. The third dynamic is the competition between regulatory regimes, with each administration altering the balance between labor demand, safety enforcement, and political optics. When Marco Rubio issued his order pausing the issuance of new work visas for commercial motor vehicle drivers, it was described by experts as a plug in the dam, a temporary measure to prevent more undervetted individuals from entering the trucking sector until oversight could be tightened. Steve Wilhelms, a safety expert in Dallas, noted that this pause was the reset required to turn the ship. In his words, the industry had been drifting towards laxity, and only by halting the inflow could regulators reassess the foundation. But the measure also has costs. Pausing visas will deepen the shortage of drivers in the short term. Freight will move more slowly, costs will rise, and supply chains may face renewed pressure. The administration's bet is that the trade-off is justified by lives saved on the highway. Step back further, and a strategic picture emerges. The trucking industry is not merely a domestic matter. It is a critical artery of the national economy. Every supermarket shelf, every manufacturing plant, every construction site depends on the constant flow of goods moved by trucks. Any disruption, whether from driver shortages, crashes, or regulatory changes, ripples through the entire system. The geopolitical dimension enters when one considers trade, flows, foreign labor, and the international movement of goods. America's highways are not isolated. They are connected to ports, to global supply chains, to patterns of trade that span continents. Thus, the issue of who sits behind the wheel of an American truck extends outward into the realm of international politics and economic resilience. There is also the matter of national cohesion and trust. When the public sees preventable crashes involving drivers who never should have been licensed, confidence in institutions erodes. When politicians argue that foreign labor is undercutting American workers, the debate becomes infused with identity and sovereignty. In this sense, trucking accidents become more than accidents. They become symbols in the broader contest over national direction. Are safety standards being enforced, or are they being sacrificed to economic expediency? Are immigration rules applied consistently, or are loopholes widening? These questions resonate far beyond the transportation sector. The Fort Worth crash, the June collision, the Florida Turnpike tragedy. Each event is a reminder that regulation and enforcement are not abstractions. They have immediate consequences measured in human lives. The announcement from Washington signals that, at least for now, the pendulum is swinging back towards enforcement and restriction. Whether this produces lasting change remains uncertain. Much will depend on the political will to sustain oversight beyond the news cycle. Much will also depend on whether the industry can adapt by improving training, raising wages, and attracting more American drivers to reduce reliance on underqualified foreign labor. Yet the larger lesson extends beyond trucking. It speaks to the fragility of modern systems that rely on constant flow of goods, of labor, of information. When any link in the chain weakens, the consequences can be sudden and catastrophic. A driver falling asleep, a missed regulation, a loophole in enforcement. Each becomes the spark for a larger fire. The geopolitical dimension of this issue lies in the recognition that national strength is not measured only by military power or diplomatic alliances. It is also measured by the resilience of domestic systems, the safety of highways, the enforcement of standards, and the capacity of governance to adapt when failures are exposed. In this way, the crashes of 2021 and 2025 are not merely tragedies to be mourned. They are case studies in the intersection of politics, economics, and safety. They reveal how decisions made in Washington, whether by suspension of a rule or its reinstatement, can determine life and death outcomes on highways hundreds of miles away. They reveal how immigration policies designed for humanitarian relief or economic expediency can ripple into unexpected sectors with lethal consequences. And they reveal how the quest for economic efficiency, the drive to keep goods moving cheaply and quickly, can undermine the very safety and stability upon which long-term prosperity depends. For a channel like Cold Logic, the analysis must be clear. This is not about vilifying individuals or dramatizing tragedies. It is about tracing the lines of causality, understanding how the convergence of labor shortages, immigration frameworks, and regulatory enforcement produces outcomes visible in the headlines. It is about asking what these outcomes signal for the broader trajectory of American governance. And it is about situating even a highway crash within the larger geopolitical map of national resilience and vulnerability.